All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there, just like you and just like me. Well, I thought in the wake of the Deacon Fry departure from the Eagles, I would revisit a topic about Don Felder and how originally Don Felder was getting paid on par with the rest of the Eagles prior to 1980, or at least up until 1980, when the band broke up. And Felder wanted a piece of this action, and I think he's justified in wanting an equal share because of Hotel California. He wrote the music to this song, and you could say, well, he didn't write the lyrics, and I'm going to come back with, well, the music itself inspired the writers, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, to come up with some lyrics that fit in with this great music that Don Felder composed. And a concept album was born out of that. And it seemed that Felder had a pretty decent work ethic. He would play all these parts and then send the parts over to Henley and Frey, and they would either like what he was sending or they would say no. I'd love to hear all the stuff that hit the cutting room floor. It's probably not available, but I've said there's got to be unreleased Eagles music, maybe music without lyrics or just really rough drafts of songs that Felder had put together, because musicians, they'll throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and hope that one of them will stick. Well, in this case, it's like winning the lottery. This one stuck, and it changed music forever. And I think based on that, Felder should have continued to get a decent cut, an equal cut, and I think that's what he wanted. What's interesting is back in, I think it was 2006 or maybe 2007, the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Felder was looking for $50 million in damages. Now, another part of these settlements, which, depending on how much money Felder gets, he might agree to, say, not performing any Eagles music, or he might agree to not use the Eagles name, or they may agree to let him use, Don Felder of the Eagles, which is a bit sketchy because, any person who is in a band should be able to claim that they were in that band. I used to be in the Eagles. Well, you can't say that. Well, I was in the Eagles, so sue me, right? And I'll tell you, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, I don't think they wanted to go to court, but they weren't afraid to go to court. And what's interesting is the agreement may have involved the other members of the Eagles, like Joe Walsh and Tim Schmidt, who were probably told that you can no longer communicate with Don Felder, which to me just seems like a huge breach of anyone's First Amendment rights. But if it's part of the settlement, it's part of the settlement. And those guys basically ghosted Felder after that. And if you watch Don Felder in interviews, he's a really nice guy. He's really easygoing. I think he was pushed against the wall in a way that maybe some of it was brought on by his own ego. But I think based on what I said at the beginning, where Hotel California is this super iconic song, and they can't undo what he did. They can't undo the fact that he wrote this iconic music. And from what I know, the demos that he sent them were really close to the finished product. Obviously, there were some guitar solos at the end between him and Joe, and there was some production value that was given to the record, obviously, that is more complete and more of a finished product than what Felder had done. But they didn't really do that much to Felder's song. And that's why it would be cool to find out if there's some other music that didn't see the light of day because the two bosses in charge, Henley and Fry, were just like, yeah, whatever. He sends us this music and we're kind of forced to listen to it. And this one was okay. The rest of it is kind of junk, but this one was a good one. So I'd like to hear the junk. I'd like to hear the stuff that didn't make the album. But with the relationships between Henley, Fry, and Felder, and then you've got the other guys, Walsh and Schmidt, who became very loyal to the company at that point. And again, Tim Schmidt, very easygoing, very laid back. If you read Felder's book, it almost sounds like he's angry with Felder, and everybody's like, just sign the contract. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why Joe Walsh hasn't reached out to Don Felder after all of this time. And Joe Walsh, of course, has done a few videos basically saying, hey, you got to be loyal to the band, and I'm being loyal to the band, and this guy went too far, and doesn't really address it directly, doesn't address the friendship issues. I mean, these guys were obviously very close, and their guitar work together, I think they made each other better. And that's a great dynamic, that they're kind of competing. And in the documentary, it's even like, okay, I've got this riff and you've got that riff. Oh yeah, we'll take that. I'm going to come back with this. And that dynamic is gone. And it's been gone since Felder was dismissed, was fired from the Eagles for just wanting what I believe to be his fair share of the money. What's even more weird now is that I believe Tim Schmidt, Joe Walsh, Stuart Smith, and possibly even Vince Gill, and maybe even Deacon Fry, were all made partners. Now, from what I hear, Vince Gill may not have been made into a full partner of the corporation, but I think everybody else was. So it's kind of ironic. I guess if they had, waited longer, if Felder had waited longer, maybe they would have brought him back as an equal partner if he played the game and was loyal and liked everything that the company was doing. And, this is the case in life. Sometimes it's the timing. Sometimes it's the principles. I think Don Felder stuck up for those principles. But it is kind of weird that a guy like Stuart Smith is going to be a partner. Why? Because he doesn't complain. He doesn't have any suggestions. He just minds his own business. And see, that's what companies like. Companies like people that don't rock the boat, that don't question anything. That's corporate life. And it's sad that you can work for a Fortune 500 company, or you could work for the Eagles, and it's about the same working conditions. And that's my other theory about Deacon Fry. Maybe it was the working conditions. People are sending me messages saying, well, what if it's substance abuse? It's hard for me to believe that based on, if these guys are going to be good role models at this point for Deacon, they would say, dude, don't do what we did, don't even go down that road. So it's hard for me to think with Joe Walsh, who basically kicked everything. And that's another issue. Felder basically ends up bringing Joe Walsh back into the band in 93, 94, when Hell Freezes Over was really breaking big. And his friendship with Joe Walsh, and even in the documentary, they're like, yeah, we needed Felder so we could get to Joe Walsh and we could sober Joe up and get him, where he could actually be functional, because he was in really rough shape at that time. And again, Felder saves the band in a way. It doesn't really get credit for it. And yeah, he's probably thinking, I wrote Hotel California, right? I got Joe Walsh back in the band, and now I'm being kicked to the curb. The old contract's not even being honored, and I'm going to fight this. I've done too much for this group. I had this strong work ethic when these guys were stumbling over each other. they can make all of this nonsense about how Felder couldn't sing Victim of Love and how, he was drinking too much the night before, and then they had to have Henley go in there and sing it. Nobody's going to really argue that, Don Henley isn't a better vocalist than Don Felder, but that was kind of like, hey, why don't you just give him this one song? But, that would have ruined Hotel California. It would have never sold the way it sold, even though Joe Walsh got to sing on it, right? And Joe Walsh, is he a great singer? No. I mean, they even made fun of Joe Walsh in the documentary, saying, hey, we gave up Bernie Ledden for Joe Walsh. We got much better guitar playing, but the vocals, yeah, it's a little debatable if the vocals are better now with Joe Walsh. I mean, Joe's a good singer. He's an interesting singer, and he's distinctive, and he had a career. So people had heard Joe Walsh a lot on the radio where they hadn't heard Don Felder. And not until Take a Ride on Heavy Metal did they hear Felder, and people were like, hey, he's not really that bad. He's using auto-tune, I think, these days. So as much as I like Don Felder, I think he should, kick the auto-tune and just sing it the best he can. Or, have Jeff Coffey out there, or have some people out there who can do justice to the Eagles and their catalog. Find somebody who can kind of sound like either Don Henley or Glenn Frey. I think you could recruit people and do a real good Eagles show. And I don't know, I think he feels at this stage he can just go out there with his name and do a great job. And he does. I don't really have a big problem with Don Felder other than, don't sing Take It to the Limit or anything like that. It's just not a good idea. In any event, I think the premise of this video is to say that these relationships may have been written out of the contract. Like, you cannot hang out and talk to. You are forbidden to talk to Timothy B. Schmidt or Joe Walsh, or they are forbidden as well. And if you're asked a question in the media, just answer it, but tell people, look, we split from this guy. He's not part of the band. I've never heard anyone wish him well, but the bottom line is people get a little animated. Like, I've seen Joe Walsh get a little animated when the question is asked, and he's kind of like, this is a family and you don't cross the family, and he did that. And so that's the end of that. And now we're looking at almost 20 years later, and these guys are still just silent. And you're doing this Hotel California tour, right? Would be a good time to bring back Felder, since he was kind of important to the whole concept of Hotel California, but nobody seems to care anymore. There's too much water under the bridge. Too much time has passed. We've got a whole new generation of casual fans who don't know who the heck Don Felder is. So it works in their favor. It works in their favor. And as bands continue to go and perform with new members, people care less and less about the personnel, which to me, as kind of a, rock and roll old time geezer here, it's just depressing. I mean, this was the year. If you're going to bring back Don Felder, you should have done it. But the bottom line is these guys are probably forbidden from communicating with Felder. And I don't think that goes away over time. I think that's until everybody, leaves planet Earth, which is pretty disturbing, unless, of course, Don Henley says otherwise. And he's got this grudge. If you read what he said during his Cass County album, whatever that thing was called, he was still really bitter. And that was a good, 9 years later. So anyway, with all that water under the bridge, and with all the drama and chaos in the Eagles, you think everybody would just mature and say, okay, maybe we made a mistake with Felder. Maybe we should have let him in. It wouldn't have reduced our income by that much. And having Felder in the band, I think, generates more income and adds more credibility to whatever the Eagles do as far as their live tour goes. To have Joe and Don back on stage together again would be just amazing. So that's my video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Smack the bell if you want notifications for new videos. And Patreon, it's just $1 a month, $2, whatever you can afford. I know times are rough out there. So if you can't do it, you can't do it, but you can subscribe, and maybe someday you can do $1 a month. So that's all I can ask for. Anyway, thanks, and I will see you soon.